Hello, my name is Diane Heard, and I am completing a communications project for interpersonal communications class HSCO 508 Liberty University. I will be speaking today about interpersonal communications, an overarching goal and enlarging the conversation, my background in behavioral blends, and its influence on my conversation, both positively and negatively, potential barriers in interpersonal context, as well as noise pollution, internal and external, and lastly, my action plan or my plan of action of how I plan to apply what we've learned here today. Basically, interpersonal communication is impersonal on one end and interpersonal on the other end. Qualities of communication or what we learn or how we learn to interact with each other is what we find in the middle. My overarching goal is to learn to be a better listener and a better Christian. By learning to be a better Christian and a better listener, I believe I can have a deeper impact on my chosen profession. As I listed here, my overarching goal is to learn how to be a more compassionate and understanding listener in order to tap into my dialogic and empathetic listening skills. So, what I mean by that is that I want to be able to take steps to orient my attention and apply focusing skills. These type of skills can be clarifying skills or asking questions. For example, if you could say something along the lines of, "What I hear you saying is dot dot dot," that will help you be a more empathetic listener. That will help me be a more empathetic listener. I also want to apply attentive silence as a clarifying skill. In other words, I want to make sure that I keep eye contact or that I lean in. It doesn't always have to be verbal cues, but it can just be by my actions. This doesn't work on the telephone, however, so I'll have to apply those clarifying skills to make sure that I ask questions based off of what the person has said. Also, encouraging skills like reflecting or mirroring can be helpful also because they're very similar to clarifying in that you have to ask questions based off of what the other person has said. Using paraphrasing is another skill that I would like to apply, which is helpful during conversations because they make sure that what the other person, what you have heard, is what the other person intended to say. These empathetic listening skills, I think, are better suited to my personality because they actually encourage me to be a better listener. I also would like to be a more dialogic listener in that I want to be able to actually take the time to understand other people. I want to apply team concepts of we and our instead of just myself. I want to learn to use that input from others and make the connection that both of our inputs are important to a project. If both parties are able to do this, then we can continue to encourage each other through communications, through a process called nexting. And basically, what nexting is being able to keep that dialogue going. I want to be able to take information from somewhere else and mix it with what they've said and what I've said, and hopefully encourage more dialogue and more communication between us. Nexting is a very important skill set, I believe, in that it allows us to take ownership and openness in a conversation. What I mean by ownership is that I take responsibility for my own thoughts and feelings, and that openness is making it clear that I'm open to other people and that they also have something to offer, or to offer me, or to offer the conversation. So, how do you apply nexting? And this is what I like to call paying it forward when you're using that nexting process to keep the dialogue flowing. you see my little diagram here of paying it forward. The conversation starts, and you're listening to what the other person has to say. So you ask a question to engage that other person. They answer you, and then you clarify what they've said to make sure that you understand. And this encourages that dialogue, because now the other person feels like you're listening to them. You've given them an open opportunity to communicate further with you. You've basically said to them, it's okay for you to continue in this conversation because I'm listening to what you have to say. They'll respond to you because now you've clarified their question, and they know that you really do understand and that you're listening to what they have to say. And then lastly, you paraphrase to make sure that what they intended to say and what you've heard are in line with each other, that you're both on the same page. This is how I'd like to apply nexting in my life. As you can see here, the conversation starts, and I'd like to be able to listen to what someone else has to say, ask questions about what they've said to engage them, to let them know that I'm involved in the conversation as well, that I'm engaged in actively listening to them. They'll continue on in the conversation, this nexting process, and then I'll clarify what we've already covered in the conversation, to let them know that I'm listening to them, but also to make sure that I know what they're talking about. And then they'll respond to me again, and my goal is to be able to paraphrase everything we've said and have both of us be on the same page, communicating effectively with one another. Now we get into my behavioral blend. I'm a C and an S personality blend. The C is a passive, task-oriented personality, and the S is a passive, people-oriented personality. Because of my C personality, I'm often seen as cautious, competent, calculating, all of these C words. This can be both good and bad because I tend to be more careful in projects, and I produce quality projects, but sometimes it may take me longer to get there. This can be a negative thing in a group setting because I have a tendency to analyze and overanalyze and reanalyze before making a decision or deciding a course of action. I must learn to accept that whatever decision I make will be the right decision. On the other side, I have an S personality, which is security oriented, steady, stable, according to this, a more passive, people-oriented personality. This blends well with my C personality, I think, because very similarly, I need to be able to adjust, grow, ask questions, and then I can go with the flow as long as everything is in a safe and secure manner. So based off of my CNS behavioral blend, I think inhaling and exhaling is a communication style that works better for me because being able to send information out by verbal or nonverbal communication and being able to listen to others by bringing that information in will be important. And it'll also be important that I clarify and that I have clarity with other people. If I do not understand a message or what the other individual is trying to relay, it can have a negative impact on our ability to communicate with each other because we're just not on the same page. In other words, my conversation needs to be very clear, it needs to be very precise, and it needs to allow me time to ask questions as well as gain a better understanding for the other person. Okay. Now, as I said, I'd like to be able to apply the art of inhaling and exhaling and using that in my potential barriers. My self-disclosure is one of my potential barriers, expressing myself without the desire to be right, which comes from my personality blends, that overanalyzing things. I overanalyze because I want to make sure that it's right. And so a solution to that will be speaking without taking a defensive posture or having that need to be right. Engaging in active listening could be a potential barrier for me also because of my personality blend. Clarifying what the other person has said, repeating the subject, then paraphrasing the conversation. I won't have to overanalyze the conversation because I've clarified it and I know that what the other person is meaning to say is the message that I have received. Being more encouraging and supportive. You could probably hear it from my voice that a lot of times I don't express a lot of emotion. It doesn't mean that I don't care, but I just don't express a lot of emotion, so people have a tendency to think I don't care. A solution to that will be allow individuals to speak and ask questions without treating them like they're stupid or that they should already know an answer. And that will come through noise pollution, staying away from those internal stereotypes, providing encouraging and supportive feedback, as well as engaging in active listening. Continuing on with my potential barriers here, like I said, that self-disclosure will be very important in my deepening of relationships. The book gave 8 benefits of self-disclosure, which I would definitely like to see applied in my life. That deepening of relationships, like I said, validation of my perception of reality, which goes back to what I was saying here with my active listening and my encouraging and supporting. It's that self-awareness, clarifying understanding, freeing experiences through expressing feelings and reactions, my freedom to express myself without those social controls, because like I said, in my personality blend, I'm the type that needs to be able to clarify, to ask questions because I'm analyzing these things, but I also need to trust myself and know that the answer that we come up with will be the right one. As a Christian, it's very important that this personality blend translates and is always reflective of Christ. As a Christian, I must be mindful of my personal and professional ethics. I must never forget that the way I communicate with other people is a direct reflection of my relationship with Christ. These internal and external noise factors, for example, external noise is something that is like a bad telephone connection or cars outside or a noisy air conditioner that make it difficult to actually hear. But internal noise factors are those hot buttons that create defensiveness, assumptions, those stereotypes that I mentioned earlier, those biases, and those interpersonal relationships where we perceive communication that's affected by past experiences with an individual, those perceptions that we have that may or may not be accurate based off of an emotional state. So this is how I would like to see me apply my empathetic and dialogic listening skills. You see, listening will take up a large majority of my conversation, and speaking should be a very small amount. I should not speak more than I listen. So when I'm looking at my dialogic listening skills and my empathetic listening skills, it should match my listening, and then very small amount being my speaking. So my action plan is not being accusatory. I want to make sure I apply those speaker or listener cards that we learned about in the Peterson text, because I think they sum up perfectly how we should be better listeners, and it teaches us how to be listeners without being defensive, without feeding into that internal noise pollution. Paraphrasing and clarifying is definitely something that I would like to do and apply more of. If I'm able to paraphrase and clarify a conversation, I think it will cut out a lot of misunderstandings that people have. Applying nexting and being able to create an open dialogue with other individuals. As it says here in Ephesians 4:32, being kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another. That's how I want to live my life, and that's the type of professional I want to be in Christian counseling. So thank you for listening to me today so much. Thank you.